And so we'll go ahead and kick this off here. Again, this is Home Performance 2.0 with Nate Adams. Before we get started, though, I do want to go ahead and give a shout out to our engineering team at Retrotec in our lab. For years, Retrotec has been the only blower door manufacturer in North America that's had a third-party credentialed or accredited laboratory for calibration. But this year, we met the highest standards for accreditation. So it's the ISO 17025 2017 standard, which is the highest level accreditation you can get. And so, again, we're the only accredited blower door that has this, blower door manufacturer that has this, but now we've taken it to the next level. So that's been a really big accomplishment for us here at Retrotec, and we're proud to show it off. So it just goes to show that there's a whole lot of hard work that goes on behind the scenes at Retrotec to make sure that we get you guys the best equipment that we can to put on the market. So just like you guys use our tools for QA, we also have a QA process where we have people come in to see how we're doing. And so that's just a quick look at what that certificate looks like. And so that just looks at the process that we use for calibrating gauges, our low flow test fans, as well as our high power blower door fans. So it's easy to say that we make the best equipment, but now we have the papers to prove it. And of course, if you're looking for more topics, we record all of these webinars that we do. So we'll put this on our YouTube channel later on. And if you just go to YouTube and search Retrotec Energy, you'll see it pop up. So we've covered all sorts of topics regarding building science and diagnostic testing for buildings and HVAC systems. So this one will be up there later on, but there's all sorts of other stuff there too. So now we've gotten onto our introductions. For those of you that are new to our webinar series, my name is Sam Myers. I'm a trainer and building science consultant for Retrotec. I've conducted all sorts of diagnostic tests in the field with blower doors and duct testers. Got into this industry when I was in grad school at East Carolina University, where I got a Master's of Science degree in sustainability. I'm also a ResNet certified HERS rater, and I'm located in Raleigh, North Carolina. So before I started out with Retrotec, I worked with an engineering firm called Advanced Energy, where I worked as a building science specialist for them. And of course, with us today, we have Mr. Nate Adams. One of Nate's, one thing that he's most known for is he is author of the Home Comfort book, which is a book that I've purchased and definitely read through. And the way I describe it to people is the perfect starting point to get into home performance and home comfort. If you're an HVAC contractor or an insulator or a builder and you're trying to learn about this stuff, that's step one. He's also a seasoned home performance contractor himself, so he has all kinds of stories that he can tell. What you don't see in this list here is the amount of resources that he's published online on his website, natethehousewhisperer.com, as well as on his YouTube channels from videos in the field. And so I'll leave it at that. I'll let Nate go ahead and tell you a little bit more about himself, and then he'll get going with his part of the presentation. So Nate, I'm going to go ahead and turn everything over to you.
All right, thanks, Sam, and welcome everybody. And I don't know, I'm just some guy from Cleveland trying to make things happen. Okay, so you guys are all here to hear about a crazy thing that we are working on called Home Performance 2.0. And this is the slide that we presented with, or that everybody signed up with. The presentation today has morphed just a little bit. So we'll get into this stuff, the homeowner delight plus contractor delight plus results competition equals scale. But we're gonna start with more of a ground level view, because this presentation I originally wrote to have a very high level view. But to start, let's just define Home Performance 2.0. This is the most succinct way I've managed to pull it off so far, because it's a very complex, multifaceted thing where we're trying to solve a bunch of problems simultaneously. But what it is a complete system to solve complex problems reliably and profitably with entry-level talent. And what we're trying to do with this is make it so that high-performance homes, meaning comfortable, healthy, long-lasting, and efficient, preferably running on clean juice, we want those to be the norm rather than the exception as they currently are. And this will largely be done through HVAC contractors. In fact, this didn't end up working as we were hoping for, and I don't know there's much we can do about it, but I would love to understand who everyone here is. So maybe you pop in questions and Sam, you look through the answers. What does everybody do here? Because that helps me understand what's best to hone in on as I go through this. So everybody type into your question box and blow it up for Sam and tell me what you do.
So we did set up a survey in webinar that was supposed to be sent out to you guys one way or another, but I also have it set up to where it will get emailed out to everybody who registered for it. So you should be getting an email after the webinar is completed, and you can send that back to us, or you're welcome to go ahead and submit your answers into the question box now. So however you want to do it, we set it up a couple of different ways.
Beautiful. Thanks, Sam. All right. This is another one I was curious to find out how many people of the people that are here have a blower door. So that'll be in there too. So these will be the survey questions you'll see. So check your email and kindly send those in. Also curious about how many people have participated in programs and how many found that it was worth it or not worth it. Okay, so having gone through that and not having a little bit of feedback, it's all good. Sam, if you get decent answers on that, kindly just break in and let me know because I'm curious. So there's two ways, well, there's a bunch of different ways to look at Home Performance 2.0, but we're going to look at it two ways today. So we're going to look at the ground level side of things, and then we're going to back way out and look at it at high level, like 30,000 foot. How do we change the industry level? So let's start with ground level. So you guys have probably seen these numbers before, but this is from our practice that we have been developing over the last couple of years because we've been developing out the process that 2.0 is based on for about a decade between my partner and I. And this is what has come out of it now. So the projects are pretty big, $27,600 on average. We live in a low housing value market in Cleveland. So the houses are typically $150,000 to $400,000. And these projects work out to be 10 to 20% of home value. So they're a nice chunk. They're a big chunk of change. The clients are not high end usually. We've had a few. This process actually doesn't work super well with the top couple of percent because they usually just want to, write you a check and make the problem go away. And then this process works best with a lot of collaboration. So this is well suited to middle income. And you can see our average square footage of houses is 2,363 square feet. So right in the middle, and $75,000 to $150,000 household income. So not super high end, but not low end. This is meat of the market. We do these projects with absolutely no programs or incentives, and the whole system is built to not need them to sell and execute these jobs. The closing ratios are very high in the 70% ballpark, and we don't do any free consulting through this. So we are lucky with the process that we have for Energy Smart Ohio, where it's leads that come in online. The only discussion that I have with clients before I show up at their door to get paid is what time do you want me to come over? It's a couple of emails, that's it. And when I show up, I know I'm getting paid. So there's no free consulting, which saves a ton of time. So that gives you kind of a basic idea there. If you want to see what these projects look like, I forgot to put the URL in here. It's energysmartohio.com. That's the website for our practice. And if you haven't checked out these case studies, I highly recommend it. If you're curious what performance jobs look like, these are full-on home performance, which 2.0 can do, but the majority of them are probably going to be HVAC replacement. So it's not going to change from traditional HVAC business model that much. But these case studies are generally at least a couple thousand words each, and they've got about 50 photos each. So if you want to see what it looks like, that's the nitty-gritty. Okay, so one of the questions we like to ask is your work fun, satisfying, and profitable? If this doesn't happen consistently for you, this system may be useful to you. And in asking the beta contractors, so this program is off and rolling, but it's in beta form and it's imperfect and incomplete, but it is rolling. And the feedback that we get from these guys is they want to be better at what they do. So would you like to be better? That means, do you want to better yourself? And do you want to be better than your competition? All of you are here listening to something on a weekday afternoon for continuing education credits, so I'm betting that everyone here wants to better themselves. Another common complaint from HVAC contractors is they want to reduce free quote time. You spend a ton of time going out and doing the dog and pony show and hoping that you can figure something out and sell a job, but usually dealing with low closing ratios. That's a common complaint, and this will help with that. And would you also like to avoid blame? I asked a question on the HVAC school group the other day about stories of what happened when you got blamed for something that wasn't under your control. And one HVAC contractor said that the salesman promised good comfort in the room over a garage. They changed the HVAC, it didn't happen, and they ended up on the hook for doing $6,000 in insulation work to actually fix the root cause, which was primarily insulation and air sealing on that house. That stinks. And all of us have stories of where we've gotten blamed for something that we couldn't control and had to pay for something that we didn't cause. That's very frustrating. This helps with that. So if you want to be better, reduce free quotes, and avoid blame, one of the best paths that we have found is to offer blower door assisted load calculations, which shockingly enough, this is on a blower door manufacturer webinar. So there you go. And the other ironic thing, though, is that I have a Retrotec gauge, but I use the other brand. Sorry. I'm sure that'll be changing at some point. Both brands work fine. I am very impressed with the software side of Retrotec.
That's kind of the beauty of this industry is, no matter which one you go with, nobody makes a crappy blower door. They both work great. So it just depends on which features suit your needs.
Yep, and I think primarily what brand your trainer used.
Yeah, that plays a large role too.
Yeah, that's how it worked with me. So anyway, if you want to be better at what you do, sizing right is super important. So hopefully at least most of you here understand that small equipment leads to better comfort, that it's going to run more. So it gives a gentle flow of heat or cool. It improves mean radiant temperatures, so the surface temperatures in the house are much more even. It's really important to size equipment correctly. And the only way that you're going to be able to size stuff well is really with a blower door. So these are actual load calculations done by Mark Perina in Rochester, New York. And actually, I saw one of his clients, Igor, forgive me, I can't remember if it's Igor or Igor, this is not your house, but this was another one that Mark ran. And what's wild is with Manual J, if you don't know blower door, you can justify anywhere between a very small and a very large piece of equipment. It's like going to the clothing store and asking somebody what size you wear, and they look at you and say, well, I don't know, small, medium, large, or XL, something like that, maybe a double X. It's not helpful if you don't know the blower door. So what you're looking at here, this is a house. It's a 2,000 square foot house in Rochester, New York. And the house actually had a 2100 blower door, which worked out to right about a 3-ton heat load. So that is, a 3-ton heat pump or a small furnace, like a 40,000 BTU modulating furnace, something like that. That's the right piece of equipment for where that house was. Now, just by playing with blower door, so the windows are the same, the insulation's the same, Nothing else changed. If we tighten the house a little bit, 30%, which is quite doable. Our project average is about 50%. And that house came down to where a 2-ton heat pump could actually do the job, which seems crazy to do a heat pump in a cold climate. But if anyone here has listened to some of the other content we've put out, we're obviously very big on heat pumps. Meanwhile, what the house actually has is a 70,000 BTU furnace. And to make that actually correct sized at 5 degrees, which is design temperature there, you have to triple the leakage of that house. So here you are. If you don't know what the blower door on that house is, and these three numbers, by the way, 1,500 to 6,000, we've seen these on houses when we've tested them. So if you don't test, you have no clue what the right piece of equipment is, and you're going to lean towards the bigger side. I understand that. That's being safe and cautious. But if you can do a blower door test, all of a sudden, your sizing is going to get much less scary. And rather than trying to choose between 5 or 6 different sizes of equipment, you'll narrow it down to 1 or 2. So if you want to be better, sizing right is really, really critical. Another thing to keep in mind, blower doors are coming. So if you want to stay ahead of things, it makes sense to just have one of these things anyway. So the 2015 IECC, that is the building code for new homes, it requires blower door testing and duct testing. And that's beginning to be rolled out across the country. And of course, there's a bunch of exemptions presently where they're saying, oh no, you don't have to do that part. But down the road, it's coming. So you might as well get out ahead of it and be ready for it and not have it sneak up behind you and surprise you. Another important piece about air leakage and blower doors is when it comes to making homes comfortable, HVAC is only half the equation. And if the house is leaky, it's probably a lot less than half, frankly. So this is a little graphic out of Home Comfort 101, the first chapter of the Home Comfort book. And this is a free download. I'll be mentioning that a couple more times through here. But if you think of your house like a mobile, like what hung over your kid's crib when they were really little, there are 2 main sides to balancing a house, balancing the mobile. So you've got in and out on one side. So this is air leakage and insulation. So that is, well, air sealing and insulation rather. You have to control air, heat, and moisture as they go in and out of the house. If you can get control over that, life is good. Now you can deal with the inside, which is primarily done with HVAC. And that is where you control air, heat, and moisture inside the house. So I like Dave Richardson at National Comfort Institute. He calls this the house side of the duct system. And if the house size is leaky or the house side is leaky, it's really tough to control. So in many cases, you don't have to do any more air sealing work, but if you don't test to find out, you don't know. So again, blower doors are critical, critical, critical. And I mentioned the free chapters. Here you go. If you go to natethehousewhisperer.com, you can download PDFs. And so that everyone here knows, you can download these chapters and send them out, no strings attached. You don't have to say where they came from because they say in them where they came from. There's no charge. It's totally free. We're letting these out because we want consumers and contractors to be well educated on this. And by the way, Sam, thanks for the kind words, because what you said is exactly what we wrote this book to do, which was to serve as the on-ramp into building performance. Because I looked through 30 or 40 different books and nothing did it. Everything was 201, 301, 401. There was no 101. So this is the 101. It's good for consumers and contractors alike. So use those first 2 chapters, the Comfort 101 and HVAC 101, send them out, use them in any way that's helpful to you. The only requirement is you need to be ethical about it. I think that's fair to ask. Okay, so just to pull back around. So in wanting to be better, reduce free quotes, and avoid blame, and how offering blower door load calcs is key to that. Now you're like, so Nate, how the heck do I actually do this? So the very basic essence of Home Performance 2.0 is it's a simple offer. Do you want A or B? So if you want to offer load calcs with the blower door, we've developed a process that's really very simple. Your customers can take path A, which is a free quote. So say they have an 80,000 BTU furnace with a 3-ton air conditioner. Great, ma'am, happy to quote you to replace like for like, or if they ask you for something specifically, great. But there is no consulting here at all. I will replace what you have with what you have, or if you ask me to put something in, I will put that in for you. But you own whatever the results are. So you can expect the same comfort out of that. Or you can do what's called a home comfort consultation, and that involves a blower door test. It's a long interview to find out different things that bother them about the house, and you're trying to match up what their goals, the needs of their house, and their budget are. And with that, you can actually do a good load calculation, and you can have high certainty that what you put in will work well. This also lets you reduce free quotes because you can give people a choice. Would you like the free quote? Sure, we do those, but don't go out there and spend a couple hours screwing around on it. Just give them a free quote. Be there for 20 or 30 minutes, get your measurements that you need and move on. Some HVAC contractors are actually starting to ask clients to take pictures of the equipment and the model numbers and text or email them to them, and they're just doing a quote off that because you know that most of these people are going to be tire kickers. They are not that interested. They're like, yeah, you're one of 5 different bids that I'm getting. So your closing ratio on that, if all things are equal, is 20%. And typical closing ratios are 20 to 35% in the HVAC industry. And that means you just spent hours and hours and hours running around. So this lets you have a reason to not do as much work for them. It's like, yeah, sure, we do free quotes. This is what they involved. Or if they take the B, the home comfort consultation, now you've got much more to work with. So you've now spent a couple hours with them, you know what they're trying to fix, and you can recommend a much more appropriate piece of equipment. Another super important point here is this is offer and decline. So we can't recommend using an offer and decline process enough because if you want to avoid blame, you give people choices. And if they choose one way and it doesn't turn out the way that they want, you can point back at that choice. And that is definitely the case with A. So say you change the equipment and they were expecting a comfort improvement and it doesn't show up. You can avoid the finger pointing game and be like, well, so remember when we had that choice, there was path A and path B. Would you like to try path B now instead? And at least you have a way out and you can avoid most of the finger pointing. Another important point around this is who decides what the homeowner needs. So if you tell a homeowner what they need, you own that sucker. Whatever the result is, that's on you. Where if you ask homeowners what they need in a consultative manner, now you share the responsibility for that. So in having been an installation contractor in the first iteration of our company, man, the free quotes, I felt like a sex worker. Like it wasn't fun. There was no relationship. It wasn't enjoyable. I didn't like doing that. Now with what we do, it's much more of a relationship. This is consultative. You're trying to find ways to help them, and they are being open with you and helping you help them. It's such a more pleasant way to go. By the way, having the client determine whether A or B is right for them is through 4 simple questions. And I'm not going to get into what those are in this webinar, but these questions can be asked by your CSR, they can be asked by service techs, or they could be asked on your website. So this is meant to be all automated. This will be part of the future system. Right now, we're winging it to some degree. And then one last really important point on the A and B process. 80% of the Home Performance 2.0 process is built to be done by entry-level talent. So if you have looked at blower doors and home performance and thought, man, that sounds scary, it's not. The way that we're designing this is if you are halfway decent with other human beings, you can run a blower door, which can be trained in a couple hours, and you can follow a script. You can do one of these. So you can send your newbies out and they can actually be useful in the field. So that's one of the key things we've been trying to do here. There's work down the road that takes more work. I mean, even choosing which piece of equipment and doing your RE matches and all that sort of thing, that needs to be done by somebody who knows what they're doing in the office. But it's nice that you can send new people out to do this work. So if all goes well, and this works as we're planning it to, there's going to be two outcomes. So if somebody chooses path A, you are going to avoid blame and you're going to drastically reduce free quote time. And instead, you'll spend that free quote time with clients that are interested in better services and better comfort. And if they choose B, the odds are you're going to experience much higher closing ratios, higher ticket sizes, because they're going to be buying nicer equipment that delivers better comfort and health in their homes. And you should get more interesting jobs. I mean, if you've been wanting to try out a piece of equipment, give it as an option, see what happens. A lot of the work that we've done, it's like, oh, I wonder if this will work. Well, I'm just going to offer this and see what happens. And if somebody chooses it, at least you jointly own the decision, which is more fun. And then obviously you get happier clients. So this is what we hope to have come out of all this. By the way, we're expecting most people will still go with A, and then a chunk will go with B. After this, there's a whole nother process for quoting the equipment, or if the house is a basket case, there's a whole nother process that will help you figure out the advanced projects like what we do. It's not that difficult. It just needs to be broken down into steps, and the platform is going to do all of that. So if all goes well, 2.0 is going to help you be better, reduce free quote time, and avoid blame. Hopefully that is of some interest to people on the call. And it also should make your work more fun, satisfying, and profitable, because that's how we're going to grow. So speaking of growth, let's talk high level. So that's the ground level view, the boots on the ground, the basics of what happens. Well, let's take a step back and talk about how we would love for this to change the industry.
So before we get into high level, can we go through a couple of questions first?
Thank you.
Sure.
Yes.
And I got to take control back so I can sort through the box here. And I think it's important to add too, blower door testing isn't what it was 10 years ago. A lot of it's been made to be automated now. And with HVAC contractors and insulators who are getting into this, they're seeing success with doing it this way. So Retrotec developed an app several years ago called rCloud, which will pair your smartphone or tablet to the gauge wirelessly. And you can actually run the test from your phone, and Retrotec will automatically generate the report from the manufacturer that's custom to that house. So it'll have geolocation, it'll have the house with the map on it, pull local weather data and things such as that. So that's just one more thing you can leave with that client when you do your initial consultation.
So I see like Scott White asking, do you recommend a certain load calc program? Not really. We use Treat, which is a New York-based program. There's probably 25 or 30 different load calc programs that are fine. It's basically just find something that you're comfortable with and one that accepts blower door numbers.
So one popular one that I always use when I was training in this is RightSoft. And I just like how detailed it gets. Yeah, that has a really nice drawing tool in it. So if you have plans, you can actually upload a PDF of the plans to scale and then draw your house around that. And once you get good at it, I mean, you can knock it out in an hour. And that's not even just a whole block load. You can do room by room to see what each flow should be to get comfort down. And then another popular one that's being used now is CoolCalc. And that's a web-based load calc software. So I think that one's a little cheaper, but it doesn't really go into the detail that RightSoft does. So there's some different options out there now. Somebody asked, Nate, I don't know if you want to get into this or not, but what sort of fee amount do you charge for an initial consult?
So I personally charge between $300 and $400 usually, and it's up to you to set. But we do recommend that you don't go too crazy on it, because if you end up doing the next step of the process, the full planning process, it may end up putting people off if they'd already spent a fortune. So the key thing to remember is normally you are doing a quote for free, and now you're getting paid. So you just flipped it from a cost to potentially a profit margin, or at least a break even. Oh boy, Jonathan Tharp is trying to open the whole can of worms. How would you explain the interplay between the following items: air sealing, insulation, duct sealing, duct cleaning, duct insulation, duct sizing, and HVAC equipment sizing? I'll let you write that book, Jonathan. But I mean, the real answer to that is it depends on the three things that we talk about a lot, which is what are the goals of the client, what are the needs of the house, and what's the budget. And then it's up to you as a professional and as a designer to begin to figure that sort of thing out. But if you're just changing the box, you're not that worried about it, or maybe you quote doing some duct sealing while you're at it. But the simple output of the home comfort consult, it's not going to get into most of that advanced testing unless you need to. So, and this is something where I live affects my thought process a lot. So in Cleveland, we have basements and almost all of our ducts are inside. So I don't really care if the ducts leak that much. It's not something that's high on the list of to-dos, where if you live any place that has ductwork in the attic or in crawl spaces, all of a sudden that becomes a big deal. As far as in the home comfort consult, what we recommend for duct testing is use a flow hood or a pressure pan and see how leaky a couple of the boots are. And if it's really, really bad, then you might want to recommend doing a full duct blaster. And if it's fine, you don't worry about it. So what you do in the home comfort consults is going to vary slightly by both where you are and what is best for that particular client.
It really comes down to I'm sure most everybody on this has probably heard it before, but the house as a system approach, not just the HVAC system, but the whole house working together as a system. And the HVAC and mechanicals are just one part of that, like Nate mentioned earlier. And my friend Joe Madosh always likes to ask the question, what's the largest duct system in a house? And the answer is the envelope. I mean, we're paying money to condition this air inside this space, and that space is that boundary that defines inside from outside, and that's the building envelope. And so, whenever you're designing a system or putting a new one in, I mean, you have to look at that to really get it right. Cool. So I think that's it for questions for now. Nate, I'm going to go ahead and flip this back over to you.
Great.
Let's see.
And thanks everyone, especially Jonathan, for coming in there and just, twisting the knife. How many days do you have to discuss that?
That's level 2. We'll do that one in a few months.
I think that might be on the 2.0 cruise.
And so before we get into the higher level, Nate, I've got a question. Maybe that some others are thinking. The name Home Performance 2.0. How would you define Home Performance 1.0, and why is there a need for a reboot?
I'm actually about to dig into that.
Cool.
And this is more of a working title. This probably won't be the actual name of the platform, but it has stuck around for a little while. So we'll get to that in just a minute. So now we're going to look at the higher levels side of things. So now back up and imagine that we're looking at the entire industry from the outside rather than a practitioner boots on the ground. I've had to get to where I'm comfortable with both of these, which is interesting. So the subtitle of the 2.0 program has ended up being the Church of the Kitchen Table. And here's what I mean by this. Like efficiency programs, if you've dealt with them, they are almost always looking out for the interest of the utilities and the efficiency programs and the public utility commissions, when what really matters in all of home performance work is what happens at the kitchen table. there's two parties that actually matter. There's the contractor doing the work, and there's the homeowner having the work done. Every time the focus comes off of that transaction, something slows down or doesn't happen. So we jokingly started saying, you know, we should worship at the church of the kitchen table. So here it is. And a key piece of the kitchen table is delight. So not only do we want customer satisfaction, but we want delight. And it's not just on the homeowner's part, we want it on practitioner parts too. Our job shouldn't suck. So this is just a definition of delight, to please someone greatly or great pleasure. So that's what you want out of this. And the Church of the Kitchen Table has three different main elements. So there's homeowner delight, contractor delight, and competition. So I'll touch on competition for a minute here, and then we'll dig into it again in a little bit. But the curse of the contracting business is, in general, the best liar wins. It's whoever tells the best story can usually get the job, because there's no metrics to compare people by. You don't know what's going on. There is no results competition at all. So that's something that we've put a lot of thought into. But let's start off with delight and how you measure it. So lots of people here may not know the term Net Promoter Score, but the odds are really high that you have been asked the question. So this is the question from an email that I got a little while ago. How likely are you to recommend our product or service to a friend or colleague? This happened to be when I bought some parts for my boiler system. But it is rated from 0 to 10 to that answer. So I would imagine almost everyone here has seen that question. Now here's what it means. This is what the system is behind it. So if somebody answers 0 to 6, they are a detractor. They are not happy with your work. They're annoyed with you. They're fairly likely to say bad things about you to other people. That is exactly the opposite of what you want out on the market. In the middle are the passives who answered 7 or 8. It's funny, I go back to my German and I think, na ja, es geht. It's like, yeah, it's fine. They don't care. Like the experience was fine, but they're not going to tell anyone about you. But if you want to grow, hopefully we all know here that word of mouth is the way to grow. It's the cheapest and best way to grow. So what you want are promoters. You want people that when you ask them if you'd recommend us on a scale of 1 to 10, they give you a 9 or 10. Those are the promoters. They are out there singing your praises and sending you business. This is what we want to aim for. And in 2.0, we have two different people to care for. We have homeowners on one side and we have the contractors on the other. So where most efficiency programs, in my experience, having been a contractor in them, oftentimes are treated like redheaded stepchildren. In this case, it's you and the homeowners. Those are the two parties that matter here. That's how this thing is going to grow. Because this will be a purely market-based program. So to tie a bow on this, if you look at the Net Promoter Score itself down here, what the company Net Promoter Score is, it is the number of promoters, or the percentage of promoters minus the percentage of detractors. So the highest possible score here is 100, and the lowest possible score is minus 100. And what we want to do here is, if we can create delight with high Net Promoter Scores, we want to be able to drive really fast growth. So I've always found this curve fascinating. This is the adoption of technology in the US from 1900 to the present. So there's cars in here, there's electricity, there's phones, all sorts of things like that. So you can see these first ones took a while to catch on. You know, they took decades to come in. But check out what's happened recently. Like this tall one right here that happened crazy fast, that's smartphones. You know, the smartphone was only introduced on the market about 10 years ago. That's not that long, and they have hit full penetration. So I've got a few friends that have flip phones. Matt Richmond, you're on the call. I'm looking at you. My in-laws are a couple of other ones. I understand loving flip phones because they don't break, but you can't get them anymore. And in a decade, those things went from zero market penetration to basically 100%. And a lot of that is because they're so good. I mean, they offer so many benefits, and they can be delightful. They can also drive you crazy. But this is the kind of growth we want to see if we want home performance to become a force to be reckoned with and make comfortable, healthy, long-lasting, and efficient homes normal. Now, to do that, we need 40% or higher year of growth, 40% or higher. That's not easy to achieve, and being able to build a system that's capable of that kind of growth is really difficult. So to that end, anyone who's been following me for a while knows I'm a huge Elon Musk and Tesla fan, but part of that came from this experience. Back in, it was either 2015 or 2016, it was right when the Model 3 had been introduced. And pulled into Aldi, which I thought was funny because it's a discount grocery store and there's this $110,000 car sitting in the parking lot. And I pull in and the guy was getting into his car and I said, "Hey, that's a great car. I've got a deposit on a Model 3. And he looked at me and very quickly, without missing a beat, is like, "Have you driven one? Have you driven a Tesla?" And I said, "No." He said, "Get out. I want you to drive my car." And I would have been shattering social contract if I had said no. So my wife and my 2.5-year-old daughter climbed into the back, and I drove it around the parking lot here. But I couldn't believe how this guy, who I'd never met before, and I've never seen him since, I don't remember what his name is, he insisted that I drive his $110,000 car. Can you imagine pulling up to a guy with a Porsche or a Ferrari and being like, that's a nice car. "Oh man, you got to drive it. Come on, come over here, get in." I mean, this car is that kind of fast. And I just couldn't believe that happened. And the reason behind that was twofold. A, it's a delightful product. These are really nice cars. They totally reinvent what the car is. And B, there's a mission behind it to move the world to running on more clean energy. And those two things together turned this, rich guy with this really fancy, expensive car into a crazy net promoter, because he was delighted by the whole thing. Now, another really interesting thing behind this, back in 2015, Tesla was only spending $6 a car in marketing. Jaguar, which is in the same market category, is spending $3,000 a car. So rather than having to spend all that money on marketing, the Tesla customers are out there proselytizing and getting new Tesla customers instead of having to put it into marketing. So you get a better car with that $3,000, or it turns into higher profit margins. So what that experience led to, and I've heard that that's not entirely abnormal. There's lots of people out there with Teslas they'll basically make you drive their car. If you get near my business partner, he has a Model 3, and he will pretty much make you drive your car or drive his car. And so this is growth of Tesla. This is a little bit older chart here, going back to 2015. But note that if you're aiming for 40% a year, they're achieving this. So this is quarter over quarter each year. So they're running very, very high growth. And here's what that looks like in a newer chart, which is going to be darn near impossible for you to read. But they started selling cars in Q3 of 2012. Very, very few new car companies are out there. They're the first one that has made it more than a couple of years since Chrysler in 1927. So just the fact that they still exist is pretty impressive. But take a look at their growth. So they came from not selling any cars to 6 years later, they are selling upwards of 80,000 cars a quarter. That's crazy. And here's what that ends up doing. They have taken over their categories. So this is 2015 sales of high-end luxury cars. So this is Mercedes-Benz S-Class, Beamer 7s, Audi A7s, things like that. This car came out, the Model S only came out in 2012. In 3 years, it had gotten to where it was outselling all of its established competitors. That's amazing. And that's what fast growth can lead to. Now in the next category, so Model X has done fine too, but the Tesla Model 3, this is December 28 sales of small and mid-sized luxury cars. So take a look at how big that bar is. It's at about almost 26,000 cars, and the next one down is 6,800 for the Mercedes C-Class. So they almost 4x the sales of the next competitor. This is what happens when you have awesome products that delight people. We'll get into the delivery issues they've had though, because that's a whole nother story. So looking back at Tesla in 2015 for Net Promoter Score, they had a mind-boggling 96. So remember, the possible scores are 100 on the high side and minus 100 on the downside. This score is insane. I've never seen anything like it before. Unfortunately, because they've had so much difficulty delivering cars in the last year and a half or so, they're down to a 37. So it's not just good product, it's also good experience that matters. But this is what they were doing back a couple years ago, and they're working on repairing that. Now, to give you an idea of how good a 96 is, these are the three major companies with the highest Net Promoter Scores right now. In the 70 ballpark. So Apple, Amazon, and Netflix. So a 96 is just crazy high, but that's the kind of number we want to see if we want to see fast growth without having to spend a fortune on marketing. And again, that consumer experience helped Tesla get to where they are. Now, we've experienced at least some of this, so zooming out from Elon Musk and all that stuff, here's little tiny Energy Smart Home Performance, our practice in Cleveland. And you can see we've got pretty good reviews, and these are two different clients. So this is Gary Sarden, and he has enjoyed learning about the process so much that he's planning to come with me on the next Home Comfort Consult so that he could potentially do it as a side gig for himself, and that's pretty wild. It's also wild that the process is strong enough that I should be able to send a homeowner out to do this. And then on the other side, this is Carlton Sears. If you read through the case studies, he owns the 1957 Cape Cod case study. That was an insanely complicated house. It had 7 attics, all of which got treated different ways. Just one of the toughest projects we've done. And we get together and have breakfast every couple of months still. And we did this project years ago, which is another part of what happens when things are good. You get friendships out of this. So I still keep in contact with many of our clients. So that tackles homeowner delights. Let's talk about contractor delight. Sam, we're going to get to your question now. HP 1.0, contractor delight. So here's one of the times where I wish I was speaking to a room because I could ask for a show of hands. But this blog entry back in 2013, Confessions of an Insulation Contractor, is really when my name began to be known. This told the story of how hard it was trying to do home performance, and this was from the insulation side, and how difficult it was to sell jobs and to be profitable. And my life was miserable. I hated my life as part of this. I was working too hard. It was straining my marriage. My wife was pregnant, and we needed to find another way. If you go back and read this, though, you'll see it explain and describe exactly what we happen to have built. So it's a better way of doing home performance. But Home Performance 1.0, I don't know many people that do it. I mean, one of the key questions I ask is, how many home performance people do you know breaking $100,000 a year in profit? And everyone I ask is like, well, I don't know that I can think of 10. I'm like, I can think of 10 HVAC contractors breaking 100 grand in Cleveland. So the business model doesn't work. We needed something different. So switching over to 2.0, Igor, you're gonna laugh at this. So I don't know if Mark Perina is on or not, but he's one of the beta contractors. He's in Rochester, New York. And a couple of months ago, he posted this meme, and I just laughed my butt off. And I'm like, Mark, I'm putting a drug reference in my presentations moving forward. So he enjoyed doing the consultations so well that he puts up Dave Chappelle with cocaine around his lips saying, I need some more consultations. It's such a more pleasant process when you get to spend time and sit down and ask questions and test things and understand where you're being a consultant rather than more of a sex worker, which doing quotes can feel like sometimes. And so that gives you one example of how this is leading contractors to feel. And keep in mind, right now, the 2.0 process is held together with duct tape and bubble gum. It's not fully fleshed out yet. We've got a whole bunch of it together, but it's all in little bits and pieces. We are building the tools right now for 2.0, and the toolbox is what we get to build next. Also in the beta group, this is Michael Hausch, and he cracks me up. Hopefully everyone here knows him. If you are on a Facebook group involving HVAC, Hausch has probably answered a question for you. He's tremendously helpful. And this picture happened when we were chatting, and I said, okay, I think you officially qualify as a house whisperer. And he takes a selfie of him just beaming and sends it over. Just cracked me up. He's such a great guy. And then one more example of Contractor Delight. This is Neil Caporetto, who's one of the best HVAC techs in the country. And we had asked if the chapters of the book were useful and if educated clients were useful, or if it helps in the sales process. And he said, yes, they do. Informed customers make decisions that usually benefit us. Ted, who's my partner, since working with you and Nate, my sales have drastically increased, not from sales tricks, but from a consultative approach to serve my clients. Thank you. So pretty happy there. So this is what we're trying to do, is make sure that the entire experience for contractors is a 9 or 10 net promoter score experience, and the same for homeowners. So that's the first two, homeowner delight, contractor delight. Let's talk about competition, because this is fun, and we've begun to see what this will look like, and I'm loving it. So this is how I think of competition in my mind. I think of a baseball card. So if I ask you who the best baseball player is ever, you really can't answer that question, because do you want the best pitcher? Do you want the guy who hits the most home runs, but he probably strikes out a lot because he swings hard? Do you want the guy who gets on base the most? Do you want the best fielder? Like, there's so many different ways that you can be good in a game, and that is how we want home performance to work. So there's all kinds of different things you can be good at. Now, to give you an example of what competition can do, and this is from within the industry, this is from a 2011 presentation by Bruce Manclark, who works for what was CSG, now Clear Result. This is a duct sealing program, if memory serves. And what they did was they started ranking people and tracking their results. And so in the yellow, you can see where the contractors were getting trained up and they were getting good at what they were doing. In green, they were achieving really good results. And then the program stopped, and look, results crashed. What gets measured gets managed. If we know that we are competing for something, we're going to do our best work. As we have been working on the projects to develop out 2.0, you better believe that I have in the back of my mind, I better seal that little crack or my number's not going to be as good, and somebody's going to kick my butt down the road when they start using the system. So I really am curious to see who ends up beating us at our own game, because somebody's going to do it, and it probably won't take that long. Now, backing up and looking at another industry, so I'm a car guy, it probably shows, but this is a really good analog. J.D. Power sends out surveys to buyers of new cars and asks how many problems they have. And this gives a really transparent way to look at how, basically how high quality cars are. And because all of this gets published, I mean, do you want to be Land Rover down here on the bottom? I mean, nobody wants to be down there. So everyone starts working to get better. Now, this is a 2006 number, but boy, if this was back in the 70s, this number is probably 300. Cars were garbage in the 70s and even through really the 80s. They only started getting good in the 90s. I mean, think about when you were younger, a 100,000-mile car, that was worn out. And now you don't even blink, you just keep going. I've run plenty of cars over 100,000 miles. And a lot of that comes back to just transparently ranking how many problems there were. So there's nothing like competition for moving things. And take a look what happened here. So in 2006, we went from 124 problems per 100 cars to in 2018, 93. So we have much more complicated cars today, but they have fewer problems on average. That's amazing. And at least part of that is because of these initial quality surveys. Something to note here, Genesis, Kia, and Hyundai, so those are all basically the same company. They used to make garbage cars, and now they are right at the top, which is amazing. And also at the bottom, Land Rover's still there, so don't buy one of those if you want to get there. Okay, so let's switch this over to looking at home performance and HVAC. So this is specifically home performance, and I should mention that using the 2.0 process, most people are either going to go A with a free quote, or they're to come back around to what we call an A+, which is after the B when they just buy equipment. So for the most part, your life is going to look like changing boxes, but you are going to make some other additions and sell some really nice equipment. But if they go through with the other side of the process, the planning process and the full audit and the home performance project, this is what comes out the other side. You're going to be doing an air sealing and insulation project. And these are our own numbers. And this chart, I got triggered for this. So John Esquivel, who's one of the beta guys, he is down in Austin, Texas, and he was posting a bunch of videos and pictures of the blower door reductions he had achieved. And I'm like, oh, well, geez, I got to show this. Totally triggered my ego. And I go and I put together this chart. These are the percentage reductions of a bunch of our projects, and I post that. And then he also made me think, all right, it's not just like percentage reduction is one thing, but how good you are at hitting targets or beating targets is even more important. So I went further and developed this chart as well, which shows what the test in leakage was, what the target leakage was, and what the test out leakage was. Because being able to hit targets is really important, particularly if you're sizing aggressively. You need to know that you can hit the target, or else the equipment may not be correct. And so I put this chart together because I got triggered, and then I triggered John Semmelhack, who is a really excellent HVAC consultant in Charlottesville, Virginia. And he went and put together goal CFM50 blower door leakage for a bunch of new house projects, and then what they actually hit. So I thought it was funny that I got triggered, and then I triggered him. And then Doug's on the call. We triggered Doug Kroll of American Temperature Control in Chicago area. And so Doug puts up what his blower door numbers are because he does home performance work. And I just thought this was hilarious that it was just this cascading effect. But then Doug, he went and he raised the bar some more, and he put up HVAC sizing. Like, so he was starting with these houses that had a 120,000 BTU furnace, an 80, and 100, and 120, and he downsized all these things into the 50,000 ballpark, except for this one at about a 70,000. So we love seeing people be aggressive on sizing, and I love that we all just started triggering each other. So what would happen if there was a system out there where you could actually see what people are doing and understand what the numbers are? It would be so much easier than a few of us geeks getting together and trying to find all the numbers so we can make some charts. By the way, for the competition, for the full-on home performance jobs, we have what we call the Stupendous 7 metrics, which are before, predicted, and after blower door, and before, predicted, and after energy use, as well as project cost. So you can slice and dice these all kinds of different ways. Who has the best predictions, who has the best reductions, all sorts of different ways. But a couple of the competitions that we see happening, the first two, these are HVAC. So who does the most aggressive sizing? I'm trying to think what was the most aggressive sizing we're doing right now is about 1,000 square foot a ton for heat pumps in climate zone 5. So in the various climate zone, who's most aggressive? That's going to be really interesting to watch. Who delivers lowest static pressure? Because low static pressure systems are quiet, they use less energy on ECM motors, and they tend to lead to happier equipment. So we'd love to see a competition of that, and we'll be collecting those metrics. And then if you do full home performance work, who has the best blower door reduction, who has the best energy accuracy, tons of other things like that. Here's what the likely results are of this competition, by the way. So we will have a race to the top on quality rather than the usual race to the bottom on price. Because if you are better, you're going to be able to prove it, and you're going to be able to ask for more money. It'll lead to self-policing QC and QA. So if you get frustrated with your guys' work sometimes, what they end up putting out, their numbers are going to be put up for everybody to see. So this is going to push all of us to up our game. Built-in measurement and verification. So we're going to be asking for client energy bills a year after the fact. So you get to see what difference you made, and that will be automated, and that won't be work that you have to do. And then consumer delight, obviously. We want people to love where they live. So that's the church. So now we've basically finished talking about the high level side of 2.0, homeowner delight, contractor delight, and competition. So back to ground level. If you want to be better, reduce free quotes, and avoid blame, offer blower door load calcs. So just to touch more on that, Home Performance 2.0 leads the delight through a consultative process. So you're going to offer the A and B choice. And at the B, the home comfort consultation, what you need to do, and there's a thorough questionnaire that helps you figure out what are client goals, what does their house need using blower door, zonal testing, and so forth, and then what is their budget. So you're going to be able to design a viable project based on those. And entry-level employees are going to be able to do this, or yourself, obviously. So the overall goals of the program are to delight contractors and homeowners alike. We want to be able to solve previously unsolvable problems profitably, because there's no point in losing money on these. It can't grow. And that 80% of the 2.0 process can be done by entry-level talent. So this is what we're hoping to build. And the free chapters, this is going to be an integral part, because if you go to a house and the clients have been at least somewhat educated, and remember the first 2 chapters of this are free for you to use in any way you see fit, life is going to be so much better because they're not going to look at you sideways, and you won't have to do as much education up front.
And much better than that than some wacky stuff they found themselves on the internet.
Yeah, exactly. Cellulose is from the devil, fiberglass is from the devil, don't use train, yeah, whatever it might be. You get to these unbalanced opinions. So the free chapters, there's now 3 different ways to get them. So you can get them in PDF form at natethehousewhisperer.com. This is kind of an ugly link. We'll put this in the follow-up email. I just uploaded videos this week on YouTube. So that you can watch or listen to the first 2 chapters. And then Tersh Blissett of Service Business Mastery Podcast has been extremely kind, and season 3 of his podcast, you are now stuck listening to me, I'm sorry. But if you don't have time to read, or that's just not your thing, because I understand, I'm not big into reading nonfiction, I prefer to listen to it, you can listen to it during your windshield time. So nobody has any excuses for not being up to speed on that. And HVAC 101, please take a look. That is the 2nd chapter, and it is almost entirely about HVAC. It only touches on building performance. So if you're an HVAC guy, that is quite safe to send out. Read it first to make sure you think so, but that should be tremendously useful to you. So use those free chapters. And we're wrapping up at this point. There's an app coming, so we're going to turn this into a piece of software. I happen to be married to a user experience designer, and the guy who did iManifold, the first one, is our back-end programmer. So we've got the team together to start building this thing, and it's going to some degree be, well, now I can't, customer relationship manager, CRM for home performance and HVAC. We'll see how all of it lands, but it will walk you through the entire process, make it very easy. So if you want more info or you want to become a beta tester, these are the two things to get started on. So first, if you aren't in it already, join the Home Performance 2.0 development group on Facebook. So there's the bit.ly, that's HP20 dev, or just look it up. If you look up Home Performance 2.0, it'll pop up. And then second, read, watch, or listen to the Home Comfort book so that you are up to speed on that. That's not self-promotion. I know it kind of is, but that's not self-promotion. It's important content that you will likely find useful, and it is integral to the 2.0 process. So I think that's it. There we go. Thanks, everybody. And now, Sam, to wrap up and do questions.
For sure, Nate. That was awesome. Again, we have a YouTube channel. This will be posted to it. Nate actually has a little more content to go into some stuff after this. So for any of you that want to hang out afterwards and hear maybe just about 15 to 20 more minutes, we scheduled this for an hour, so we wanted to land on that. These usually go over, but we're gonna keep trucking. We're gonna keep trucking just a little bit more after it, but yeah, all of this will be recorded. But but yeah, we have our YouTube channel that this will be on. I also put my contact information here as well as Nate's. So if you're thinking about this stuff later on, please reach out with your questions. We're here to help you out, whether if it's something with HP 2.0 or something with blower doors or building science. We're both here to help you out and help you move forward. So happy Friday, everyone. If you're going to hang around, we'll be here. Thanks for attending. So Nate, I'm going to let you keep trucking here.
Oh, sure. Well, so I can touch on the last couple of things here. This it was a presentation that I watched just a little bit ago by Dr. Steve Fox. He is Brit, and he was looking for examples of how to scale, and we were very flattered that he mentioned 2.0 in that, but it's good to see that other people are trying to figure out the same thing that we're trying to figure out here. So I love this little slide. What people really want: comfort, health, quality experience. So it's not efficiency. In fact, efficiency last is something we say pretty often. There you go, there's Passive House. So he talks about how we need to sell those benefits. And it was really funny because it sounded like we were singing from the same song sheet. And he also talked a lot about how consultative selling is really important to this. So we don't want to tell people what they care about. We want to ask, which is ironic because I just spent an hour telling you people stuff. Sorry. Can be the curse of these. So he defines consultative efficiency or consultative selling, and how energy efficiency is almost always product selling. It's like, oh, you need this manufacturer's blah, blah, blah. That's going to fix your problem. It's not products to solve these problems. It's almost always a mixture of things. And I love this point too. Customers almost always want someone to be personally responsible for making certain that the job gets done in the right way, a project manager. And 2.0 ends up setting up that to be possible. This I thought was pretty fun too. Like it's just amazing how he's seeing things the same way on the other side of the pond. You want to make high performance buildings desirable, cool like a Tesla, which may or may not have come from an article that I wrote. Consultative selling and project management. And he talks about how the existing supply chain doesn't have these characteristics. We have to build that in. This was an article that I wrote a while ago, so I didn't get into electrify everything at all here, very much on purpose actually, but we like the idea of moving homes to run on more clean energy, and that basically means electricity, which generally means not a gas meter. So this was an article that I wrote for Green Tech Media about a year ago. And this was another important piece that he had that I really liked. He talks about to actually scale and really have an industry, we need to build a jigsaw puzzle. So there's provide finance, which so far we've actually found to not be a problem. Our clients have figured out where to get the money. You have to develop a pipeline, so more attractive business models, consultative selling, development platforms, which is what this is, and then also aggregate projects, which is a more advanced topic, but 2.0 should have that capability. We have to standardize the projects to some extent, which is another thing that happens here. Technical solutions, contracts, systems and underwriting. Down the road, all of this will fit in. And then this is probably the most important piece, in my opinion. It's build capacity. So he talks about the finance industry. I'm not particularly concerned about that. If we get a whole bunch of these projects out there, banks are going to be banging on our doors to provide financing. But first, we need to create the demand and the supply for the projects. So in the supply chain, we need contractors that can do this work. Because I'll tell you what, the 10 or 20 projects we can do a year, that's not going to change anything. And we never really meant it to. And then on the demand side, we need homeowners to be asking for this kind of work. And this is where HVAC contractors are very well placed, because they can provide the demand by mentioning things to their clients, and they are also inherently the supply. So that is a big reason of why we ended up focusing here. And with that, I'm really done. So thank you, Sam.
The encore.
If anybody wanted one, sorry.
No, Nate, this has been great. We were talking earlier, and one thing that I'm trying to do with this webinar series is really just try to provide as much guidance and answers as we can to problems that you guys are facing with whether if it's in the field or in your business itself. So reach out. What other topics would you guys want to hear on these webinars? Let us know. We just want to know what kind of problems you're facing and how we can help you out. And Nate, thank you again for spending the time with us today to go through this. We hope to have you back on here in the near future once Home Performance 2.0 gets rolling. And it's exciting to see that you guys have some beta projects going on and that there's success with that. So best of luck to you. And as always, let us know how we can help.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the opportunity. This was a lot of fun.
For sure. Well, that's going to wrap it up. I don't think any last minute questions came through. I've been looking through the box here, so I think we're good on that point. So again, if you missed, anybody missed part of this, or if there's a colleague or a client that you're working with that you want to show them, whether it's this presentation or any other videos that we've shown before, again, visit our YouTube channel. Nate has his own YouTube channels as well, where he has some great videos. So we will hopefully see you on the next webinar. Thank you.